I've had the Pixel 9 Pro in my hands now for about a month, and I recently switched to it from the iPhone 16 Pro Max as my daily driver. Now, I've already made a video talking about why, but I want to discuss my findings and tell you whether or not I feel like I made the right decision. On paper, these are two very different devices. However, I found them to be a lot more identical than I would have thought, with the Pixel pulling through in areas that I find myself heavily preferring. Rapid fire here. Gemini, for instance, is solid. I love the promptness, the responses that I'm getting, and overall it feels a lot more practical right now than Apple Intelligence. To me, it feels like something that's actually useful, and it's integrated correctly over being an afterthought. Universal navigation gestures are also heavily appreciated since I can swipe out from any side of the device to back out of a page or make my way through menus. This is far more practical than how the iPhone handles it. The UI and the Pixel's Android 15 in general is also a breeze to work with. It's not overwhelming for new users, it's very easy to transition to, and in my opinion it looks really nice. It's also super snappy, there's no fluff, the app drawer is far less confusing than Apple's app library with everything being listed alphabetically, and I like that widgets don't have to pertain to a certain format. They can have nice transparent backgrounds like the weather widget that I use. There is a lot more though, and before we dive deeper, I just want to say thank you so much for the support that you've been showing me. We're almost at 50,000 subscribers, and if you can leave a like and a sub on this video, I would really appreciate it. I can't believe we're pushing that close, and I can't thank you all enough for the support. Anyways, look, in reality, these two are very similar. I mean, at the end of the day, they're both smartphones, and their functionality isn't really going to differ too much from one or the other. But the iPhone has started to feel stale, and I find myself going into this trap every year. The thinner bezels, the faster SoC, and gimmicky features that I want to try out, this time around being camera control. The iPhone doesn't really bring anything new to the table though. I guess I was just under the impression that iOS was just going to handle what I needed to better. I figured for apps like Instagram, the iPhone was just going to pull through dramatically. And don't get me wrong, the camera performance in-app is better, but it's actually really not that far off. In apps that I also use like Lightroom, I expected the slower Tensor G4 to handle it poorly, whether that was in export times using tools like generative fill or just getting too hot after an extended period of time. But again, I was also just very wrong. In fact, in Lightroom, I found my experience with the Pixel to be on par, and in some cases even better than what I'm getting with the 16 Pro Max. And like I mentioned earlier, the battery life. Since I'm using the smaller Pixel 9 Pro and not the XL, I thought it wouldn't even come close to the iPhone in terms of battery performance. But once again, I was wrong. The Pixel can easily exceed 9+ hours of screen on time, and while it does have a larger battery than the 16 Pro Max, for some reason, I still can't wrap my head around how this is possible on a smaller device. I guess at the end of the day, that just goes to show you how efficient the Tensor G4 is inside of the Pixel, despite the A18 Pro in the 16 Pro Max being incredibly powerful and efficient as well. However, one thing that I do care a lot about though on my phone is the display's brightness. I find myself shooting most of my B-roll outdoors these days, and although that's temporary since I am moving into a new studio shortly, what's been a huge help is when devices are able to push through that direct sunlight. Now, with the Pixel 9 Pro and the 16 Pro Max, both do not share the anti-reflective coating that the S24 Ultra has, which is fantastic in harsh lighting environments. But I will say that I was pleasantly surprised by the performance of the Pixel when outdoors. Much like the iPhone, it's very visible, and Google claims a 3000 nit peak on the OLED display, and when side by side with adaptive brightness turned off, the Pixel is very bright. Of course, this doesn't just help with filming though. It is nice being able to go outside on a sunny day and be able to see exactly what I'm doing clearly, and that's also why I prefer using these devices with these brighter displays, and it's the reason why the S24 Ultra stood out to me specifically, because the anti-glare coating was actually really good in that use case. However, from what I've noticed using these two devices on this table, the Pixel in a lot of cases actually does get brighter and stay brighter for longer without feeling the thermal burden, which is another thing, and not that this is an issue and it'll go completely unnoticed when using a case, but the iPhone actually does get warmer than the Pixel. The iPhone gets warmer while charging, it's warmer while I'm in the sun, and whilst I don't believe this has any real impact on things like games, when it comes to throttling at least, the iPhone does get warmer with longer play sessions. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this is kind of a BS statement to make, and I do see this thrown around a lot, and just to clarify, yes, the iPhone does get warmer, but that doesn't have any negative impact on the iPhone's performance, at least when compared to the Pixel. The thing is, in heavy games, the iPhone does get warmer, but with the A18 Pro, it's also much faster and way more powerful than the Tensor G4 inside of the Pixel. So when I say it gets warm in games and the Pixel remains cooler, don't get it twisted, because the iPhone does heavily outperform the Pixel 9 Pro in pretty much every task that is going to put stress on the GPU. One game that I like to test a lot is Warzone Mobile, and in terms of performance on the Tensor, it's not even close to the iPhone. You cannot get the same frame rate with the same graphical fidelity. This doesn't mean that the Pixel cannot game though, and I do find myself occasionally picking up Diablo Immortal and COD Mobile when I do have some downtime just to wind down, and the Pixel does handle it well. It's just that for mobile, the Pixel is not going to give you the flagship gaming performance that you're paying the flagship premium for. And as I always say, despite how positive I've been with the Pixel 8 and 9 series of devices, I don't believe anyone should pick them up for gaming as a primary focus. Now, when it comes to actually using the phone, there's a lot of areas in which the Pixel for me does excel. I'm currently renovating a studio space in a basement, and with the iPhone, the reception down there is terrible. I've actually missed a very important call from my family doctor because it didn't go through. And when I make a call, I usually have to run upstairs and out the back door just to make sure that I'm actually getting reception. With the Pixel, I do not actually have an issue with reception in this area at all. Every call goes through, every call stays on the line, and I can hear people clearly. Now, it is interesting because I would say the iPhone 16 Pro Max did see an improvement in this area over the last handful, because even the space that I'm in right now was a challenge for the iPhone 15 Pro Max, whereas this phone, I have no issues with reception. Now, with the Pixel, I also like that during calls, I have the option for the Pixel to screen them. This allows me to answer the phone calls I'm unsure about, but use the Google Assistant to navigate through them. This makes it very easy to hang up on pesky salespeople who are very pushy, and weed out spam callers that somehow make it through Google's insanely good spam filtering system. And there are some quirky things like audio emojis, and this is not something that I'm ever going to regularly use, but to be honest, it is kind of funny that every time my brother calls me to answer the phone by farting into it. I don't know why this is a thing, but it is kind of funny. I don't know. I just like how unserious Google can be at times because it makes the phone feel more fun. Like on the surface, the Google Pixel 9 Pro looks very professional. Whether you love or hate its design language, it's a lot more elegant than other devices. But back to what I just said, they're not afraid to give us colors that show the phone in a different light. This is the iPhone 16 Pro Max's hero color, Desert Titanium, and it's very safe and understated. This is the Google Pixel 9 Pro's Rose Quartz, and it's very bright and vibrant, and whether or not it's your flavor, it stands out as a more fun option in my opinion. But on a serious note, back to the whole phone calling thing, I think that as a phone, Google really excels. Things like Hold For Me, which let Google Assistant tell you when the caller is back on the line, are very useful. And Direct My Call, although not available in Canada, helps you navigate through robotic system menus to help you get to where you need to be when calling businesses. Wait times is something that's available only in the US at the moment, but when calling businesses, you can give feedback on how long the wait time actually was to let other Pixel users know how long they can expect to be on the phone for. I just think that the phone app is something that's heavily overlooked by a lot of companies, despite the phone app being pretty much the most important tool on a phone. And I think that it is nice that Google is giving it the attention that it deserves over companies like Apple or Samsung. And despite not being able to take advantage of a lot of these features yet here in Canada, I still do appreciate the ones that we have, and I am excited for the future when all of these roll out. And there is also a really big feature that I appreciate: notification summaries. So this is on the iPhone right now. It kind of sucks. It almost is always guesstimating or adding words that didn't exist, which can make it super confusing and force me to read the extent of the text message just to make sure that I didn't miss any context. And in its state right now, this doesn't work through CarPlay. I actually take that back. I was in the car a moment ago and I didn't actually have my Pixel on me because it was charging, and I ended up using my iPhone on Apple CarPlay. Surprisingly, it actually did have notification summary now through CarPlay. Now, it worked fine, but it also didn't necessarily give, once again, really good context as to what the message was about. It seemed to kind of just like oversimplify what the text was originally for, and it kind of just left me more confused than anything, so I had to look at my phone and see what the actual message was. I definitely still prefer Google's way of doing this. Now, Gemini actually does a really good job at summarizing the notifications, and it is also available in Android Auto. And one thing that I like about it is it's just very smooth and it works really well. Like, I got a text message the other day from my dealership telling me that I had a scheduled appointment for my detailing and for my oil change on my car. Instead of just going through the whole message, which was like 3 paragraphs long, it told me you have a detailing and oil change appointment on this date at this time at this dealership. It just was simple, it worked very well, and it didn't take a lot of time for me to actually get the gist of the message. It's something that I actually really do like and appreciate on the Pixel. There's also Circle to Search, which helps me find wallpapers that I see on other people's devices and allows me to look something up from an image. Another thing that I use a lot though on the Pixel is the transcripts in the voice recorder. And the iPhone does finally now have this, but I find that it actually gets what I'm saying wrong a lot of the time and can be pretty jumbled and confusing. The Pixel is also able to detect multiple speakers and categorize them, which is nice for recording important conversations and being able to look back at them with a transcript for reference at a later date. And now, in terms of hardware, the Pixel has been fantastic. It's aluminum, objectively not as hard or as premium and durable as titanium, but it is a very high-end feeling device. The display is up there with the best. It's sharp, it's 120 Hz, it's OLED, and like I mentioned earlier, it's very bright at 3000 nits. The phone has a frosted matte glass on the rear with glossy aluminum sides, making it easy to grip onto, and despite the Pixel 9 Pro's smaller size, it's very capable. It does house some very impressive shooters. There's a 50 megapixel main camera, a 48 megapixel ultra wide, a 48 megapixel 5x telephoto, and there's also a 42 megapixel front facing camera. And the Pixel is capable of delivering 4K at up to 60 frames per second for video. The images on the Pixel are hands down my favorite. They're punchy, there's a lot of detail and contrast, and it does a really good job with low light, and I like the look straight out of camera. I will say that with the iPhone, I do feel like I need to shoot RAW to bring some of the life back into the images, but the Pixel does a really good job at making the scenes realistic whilst also making them feel alive. And I will say there's just something about Google's character and Google's color science, and there's no doubt a lot of people come to the same conclusion with the Pixel cameras. Though, I'll be honest, for video I do stick with my iPhone. It's not that I necessarily think the quality is 100 times better. It is better, but at the end of the day, I think the iPhone does a better job with stabilization and lens switching and giving you a better result out of camera. I also like that the iPhone can shoot in a really nice log format, and it's just really convenient. But for point and shoot, I would say that the Pixel is honestly unreal. I will also say though, from my experience with applications like X, I've always felt the performance to be kind of lame on Android, with some features not working correctly. But on the 9 Pro, there hasn't really been a single app that I've used on the Pixel that's felt off to me. So far, it's almost been a perfect experience. And now that the iPhone supports RCS, I'm almost not losing anything. Like in a group chat conversation or when messaging my family, we're able to send full res media to each other rather than resorting to SMS. Am I happy with the Pixel 9 Pro? Honestly, more so than I would have thought. And to be quite honest, if I can only choose one of these devices to carry out of these two phones, the convenience and the feature the Pixel brings to the table far outweigh what the iPhone does for me. So, and I never thought I'd say this, but yeah, I'm sticking with the Pixel 9 Pro. Thanks for watching this one. If you managed to stick all the way through, go ahead and drop a shark emoji down in the comments below to let me know who the real ones are. Leave a like down below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like this video. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.